going to make a pretty bold statement today. Normal is bad. Queer is good. So, I said I wasn't going to focus on any negative things, like, the obvious situation, after publishing my song. And I won't focus on them. However, for the sake of contrast, towards my main point, and also giving this whole video the context I feel that it needs, it's kind of necessary to first mention some negative things to explain why I can confidently make the statement, initially, that normal is bad. Normal is what led to the tragic set of circumstances that, causes all the needless suffering and pain that we see in the world, like, all around us. So, for example, deforestation and pollution lead to climate change. Abuse of power leads to war. Tax cuts for the rich leads to less public spending and funding. Superiority complexes within humans leads to other species becoming endangered and extinct. The inequality of distribution leads to both famine and poverty, as well as obesity and gross wealth, and the hideous dichotomy therein. Society tackling the symptoms and not the root causes of major problems leads to a population of disaffected doomers. Normal is when some of the world's highest ranking political leaders are dishonest, cruel, incompetent, selfish, ridiculous, disrespectful, and or all of the above. Just to give you a few examples, Rodrigo Duterte, President of the Philippines, Hassan al-Bolkiah, Sultan of Brunei, Kim Jong-un, Supreme Leader of North Korea, Jair Bolsonaro, President of Brazil, Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, and of course everyone knew it was coming, Donald Trump, President of the United States of America. Collectively, these are some of the worst human rights violators ever to have existed, and yet they are in charge. Normal led to the wrongdoing and the oversights that caused the pandemic crisis that we are now living through. Breaking from our normal routines is what's keeping some people alive. Now, look, my point is, I'm not saying this to make anyone feel bad or guilty. No one person can take on the responsibility for all the world's evil, okay? Just do what you can when you can. Plant a tree. Donate to food banks. Help healthcare workers by just staying the fuck indoors. Vote against the worst offenders. But my point is that normal is bad. And after this crisis is all over, returning to normal, the whole business as usual mentality, is a terrible idea. The last thing we should even consider is doing that, despite the fact that I understand that going back to normal is something that I really want to do personally. I liked working. I liked my job sometimes. And the least fortunate of us won't have the option to go back to normal. So I encourage everyone to stand up to the status quo when it is harmful. So now that I've established my main position on that whole clusterfuck, I want to move on to the more positive change that I'm trying to affect in the world and explain the second part of my initial statement, that is, queer is good. Now, yes, I am using the term queer here in sort of a playful, broad sense to describe the unusual, the weird, the strange, i.e. not normal, as well as the more narrow sense of anything related to the LGBT plus spectrum. And in that spirit, I intend to share some funny anecdotes from me and my friends' experiences being members of this community, because although it does come with problems, and some of those problems are very well documented, it's not all bad. So, for one thing, finding other people in the LGBT plus spectrum. This happens, pretty much anywhere. For me, it's happened at home. When I moved here, first of all, I discovered I wasn't the only gay in the building. When I started work, I discovered I definitely wasn't the only gay there. I wasn't even the first or only trans person working there. This kind of opposite to the only gay in the village expectation is really nice. Now, look, I'm not saying that it's a guarantee that you'll get along with everyone within the community or be like besties. But there is a certain level of respect that you get and safety net from each other. You can relax, be yourself, because you're in this kind of safe space of personality. You know that you're not going to get ridiculed or picked upon because of that thing, most of the time. The second thing I want to mention is a fresh start. Now, coming out, it's very hard, it's very nerve-wracking, but it does come with the positive of, giving you the opportunity to press a restart button, as my friend put it, to introduce yourself as the person you want to be seen as, and being honest about this newfound identity. And this is coming from someone who's just a cis gay man. For me and for everyone else I know who is trans, this is especially poignant if and when we go through a name change, because our new identity literally comes with a new label. The third thing, helping others to come out by being visibly out and, living your own life, encourages others to see the possibility that they can also live their best life and be out, honestly with themselves. I've already mentioned this before in a previous video that I'm going to link below, in a certain story that involves a drink called Mickey Finn. A friend of mine shared this story with me that because they were out and had come out and had basically been the first one in their family to do that, their cousin then had the strength and the courage to also come out. And this led to a bit of a knock-on effect, because the parents of the cousin, who had been up until that point fairly anti anything related to do with LGBT, they switched. They accepted their child, and they became very accepting, which it's hard to know if the two things are directly related, but what happened next is they then fostered more children, which had a positive overall effect on the whole family, because they, introduced these children to the whole, extended family. And that just made the whole family unit a lot happier. And it's interesting to see that there's this, knock-on effect, which we can only sort of really hypothesize, but either way, positivity has been spread, and that's great. The fourth thing I want to talk about specifically is trans-related. Being trans and being mistaken for cis. Now, this can be both flattering and fun on most occasions. Sometimes it's not that great. Now, for me, I'm openly trans as fuck. And I have this naturally androgynous look, at least I think so. And in my experience, it's basically just that most people can tell. Now, this happened with one of my co-workers that I started working with didn't actually realize I was trans for a long time. I think I must have just used the word gay, because I do use that word as just a general kind of, meaning like queer, LGBT. It's just a one-syllable short word. So they told me last night that they thought that meant I was a cis lesbian, which, hey, there's nothing wrong with being a cis girl lesbian. It's all good. I'm not, but it's nice, And this person didn't actually realize I was trans until, we went for drinks. This must have been about, 2 months after we met. One of the things that's funny, but not necessarily flattering, is when I was at work, fairly recently actually, before the whole lockdown thing, there's this customer who is a regular, and this person has, learning difficulties. And, they saw me one day, and, well, I don't know if you can tell, but I am not the slimmest of people. I'm a bit chubby, I'm fine, it's no big deal. I like bigger tits, but hey. This customer looks at me and said, "Oh, so you're pregnant?" I did not know how to respond to that, because, there was no way of saying to this person that's seriously inappropriate, because learning difficulties. And it wasn't entirely offensive, but no. Wow. Something else that's weird happened to a different friend of mine who got wished Happy Mother's Day. And she's like, okay, thanks. and then gets asked, oh, do you have kids? Where do people come up with this? I don't know. A little subsection of this point that I want to make is about smear test reminders. Now, me and a couple of trans friends of mine get these smear test reminders because, you know, we find it funny because when you're listed as female in the NHS and there's no non-binary option box that you can tick. But anyway, we find it funny that we get these things and they're like, just, it's kind of affirming, but at the same time, ultimately pointless. For trans men, there's a serious risk of them being overlooked, which is actually not so funny, because it can be dangerous. So, you know, if you are a trans guy who has a uterus and everything, then, you know, bear that in mind, that you might need to schedule your own. But of course the funniest instance of this happening was when I was in the GP. Now, I had to see a different doctor than I normally would, because my regular GP was like away or off or whatever. And this doctor, like, we were having conversation about something else entirely, and then looks at the screen and says, oh, we see on our records that you haven't had a cervical smear. Shall we book one in for you? I'm like, no, that's fine. She's like, oh, why is that? Oh, why don't you want one? Because I don't have a cervix. Yeah. That's always funny. So, yeah. It's amusing in an affirming way most of the time. The fifth point I want to bring up is all about insight. Now, we, LGBT plus people, we have actually got an advantage, a small advantage at least, when it comes to understanding our partners. People in same-sex relationships have better understandings of the insecurities, the sexual needs, the, you know, all of the, like, thought patterns and processes of their partners than different sex relationships. Now, look, I'm going off of broad generalizations here. This does not apply to everyone. Everyone's a unique individual, blah, blah, blah. But it tends to be that because you share those same kinds of personality traits and instincts and things, because, like, gender is a weird thing. Like, it does divide us. You know, it's what separates men from women from non-binary people in a, it's a personal way. It's not a meaningful way in the sense of, like, the outside rest of the world kind of thing. Like, we should all be treated equally. But it is one of those things that does kind of influence us just a little bit. So having those same kinds of understandings actually does make for, like, a little bit of an advantage in relationships. And similarly, trans girls and AMAB trans people who date men, and trans guys and AFAB trans people who date women have a better understanding of their partners. Not because they're the same, they're definitely not the same, but because of these similarly shared experiences in their upbringings, right? And the last point I want to bring up is, you know, wholesome and stuff, acceptance, because this is a, like, very wholesome show here. There's a rising level of acceptance of, you know, all of us being visibly out. And that actually pushes for more acceptance. Like, the more people are out and proud, the more other people can see, hey, it's not such a bad thing. These people are gay, these people are trans, these people are, whatever. Doesn't actually matter. It doesn't make us bad people. And this kind of weird acceptance can take some strange random forms. Being a trans girl who does the whole communal peeing thing, okay? You just go to the bathroom, you go in the stall, everybody else goes into their stalls, and you carry on the conversation whilst peeing. Like, oh, did you see that guy looking at me? Yeah, I did. Shit, I've run out of toilet paper. Does anyone... Yep. Like, that happens. And everyone's fine with it, because nothing weird happens in bathrooms with trans people. It's all fine. And that level of acceptance is, like, really cool. You get random acceptance from strangers who know about us now. Like, I met some people on a train and, like, we didn't know each other at all. And we just got to talking about, like, different topics du jour. And I mentioned, like, after a while, the whole conversation came up about, like, what do you like to be called? And I explained that I'm non-binary, and one of the people who was also, like, similar kind of age range as me, knew what that was, and knew that meant that I'd be more likely to appreciate they-them pronouns. That was something I didn't have to explain, which was really cool, because of the societal acceptance. You get random educating the cisheads. And this is sometimes trying and tiring, but obviously it can be a positive experience. I had someone ask me, what my pronouns were, and they were really nice about it, and they pulled me off to one side and then asked. And I said, thank you for doing that, because I appreciate not doing it, just blurting it out. And eventually, over time, explaining those sorts of things to people will become less necessary with more acceptance. Also, the more acceptance there is in the world, the less it disempowers potential blackmailers, because they think of it as being something negative or shameful, and, like, actually it's not. Now, there are some people, one person, my friend, who had to come out because of potential blackmailing, and the same thing happened to a YouTuber called Nikki Tutorials, who had to forcibly sort of come out before being ready because of these blackmailers. But getting the upper hand on them, coming out, and then seeing all of the acceptance afterwards is a lot better than living in fear and shame. And of course, acceptance doesn't just refer to other people accepting you, it also involves accepting yourself. So after, like, and this is something that one of my other friends told me, after realizing and coming to accept this crucial, integral part of their, like, themselves and their personality, it led to them coming to accept and feel more comfortable with other sides and parts of their identity that they weren't necessarily open to before. And it opened up new avenues to different communities. Like, one person is now in, like, actually, how many? Quite a few people I know now are into, like, kink and fetish. Other people might find out that they're also into being a fairy, or, like, all of these things that are just a part of that personal journey. So anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it, because otherwise this video is going to get really long. I've got some editing to do. But yeah, I hope that this has left you feeling more positive today. And I'll see you very soon. Bye. Non-binary is valid, goddammit! Normal is what led to shit. The parents of this oh shit.